Welcome to the English Worship Jokja podcast. I'm Pastor Jamie Kemp, and I'm excited that you're joining us for this week's message. English Worship is a charismatic, Christ-centered community. We want to empower you to pursue your God-given purpose in God's global plan. To find the most updated information about English Worship Jokja and how you can get connected, follow us on Instagram at EWJokja. Thanks for listening. All right, well, good morning and welcome to English Worship. I'm Pastor Jamie, and I'm glad that joining us on site and online. I do feel an extra burden of pressure to preach a great sermon today because you all came in the rain. So it's like you all came like, hey, this better be good, all right? Like those of you watching online, it can be an okay sermon. Those of you who came in the rain, man, you're expecting something big. All right, so I feel like this super pressure today to be great. Well, as you can tell, there's a lot of transition happening here at English Worship, and here's what I want you to recognize. Whenever we start to hear a repeated message, the same message from the Lord or from church or from leadership in our lives, it usually means God is trying to get our attention, all right? God, when we hear something repeated over and over again, usually God is trying to get our attention. With Taylor going back to America on Monday, Sim and Anna moving to Jakarta on Wednesday, me accepting this position as the lead pastor at IES Jakarta in February, and Vanessa returning to America in March, the Lord is up to something. You've got to see this. He's shaking up leadership here, and these losses actually provide opportunity for some of you to step up and step in. All right, so that's what I want you to recognize in the midst of mourning or sadness or celebration. These losses actually provide opportunity for some of you to step up and to step in. I mean, think about this. Pastor Elia, if I were to stay here another 5 years, it would never give Pastor Elia the opportunity to step up and step in to the position of becoming the new lead pastor here in Jokja. I'm excited to see Nathan take over the content, the speaking on Friday nights at Chi Alpha Jokja. So, and I heard three people in the video, in Taylor's video, mention her as a leader or mentor in their life. And I think, man, she's been a mentor in your life. Guess what? This is your opportunity. Not even your opportunity. This is your responsibility now to step in and mentor someone else. So I want you to understand, when God is shaking things, when we hear this repeated message over and over again, with so many transitions or losses, I want you to see that this is actually your opportunity to step up and step in. When the Lord moves someone out, He's preparing to move someone else in, all right? Now that'll preach. That's good preaching, all right? I told you I feel pressure today to preach extra good, so you're going to get it, all right? So I have to ask, what's the Lord speaking to you? Where is He asking you to step up and to step in? So although we grieve and mourn the loss of friends and leaders in our life, meaning it's okay to be sad, I'm sad. I look around and I see so many different faces and so many special people in my life, but I'm not ready to talk about that yet. I still have 3 more weeks. All right. So let me put it this way. English worship has always been a river, not a lake. We've always been a river, not a lake. People have always been flowing in and out of our community, out of our church. And the goal has always been to meet people where they're at and help them flow down the river a little closer to Jesus, all right? That's the vision, that's the goal. And my prayer for you is that you are closer to Jesus today than you were when you arrived in Jokja. So for our international students, my prayer for you is that you are closer to Jesus today than when you arrived here in Jokja. For the mahasiswa in the room, that you're closer to Jesus today than you were when you arrived here in Jokja. For the young adults and the old adults in the room, that you are closer to Jesus today than you were when you arrived here in Jokja. Here's how we handle all this sadness and celebration. We are sad that friends and leaders are leaving, but we celebrate the time we had together. Okay, so that's kind of like your obat. That's your medicine for today, all right? We are sad that friends and leaders are leaving, but we celebrate the time we had together, all right? That's why I'm calling my last Sunday, February 1st, will be my official last Sunday, even though I'm coming back every month, all right? Some of you guys are going to be like, goodbye, Jamie. What are you doing back here? All right, my official last Sunday is February 1st. All he's doing is like a prophetic Bible verse. This is our verse that I'm praying over us and that I want us to capture. It says this in Philippians 1:6. This is our verse. It says, I am certain that God who began the good work, everybody say good work. All right, you're still there. All right, good. I am certain that God who's begun the good work within you will continue his work until it is finally finished on the day when Christ Jesus returns. So he's the God who started all this. He's the God who will continue all this. And he's the God who's going to finish all this. So this gives me great confidence as I look ahead to the future. I know that I didn't start this. Jesus did. I'm not the lead pastor of English worship. Jesus is. I have just 3 more Sundays here at English worship. And these are a few things that I want us to understand, that I want to walk us through over these next 3 weeks. The first one is this, that God started all of this. The second one is God will continue all of this. And the third one is God is not finished with all of this. All right. So one night, one of the highlights of my last year, of 2025 of last year, and really one of the greatest accomplishments of my life, is that I ran a marathon. All right. Now, this is the first time I'm talking about it publicly. I've been waiting to talk about it. Those of you who've been close to me, you know I've talked about it nonstop. Privately, there's a famous joke. There's an old joke that says, how do you know if someone has run a marathon? Don't worry, they'll tell you. Like that's the joke, all right? So now I'm going to tell you, all right? I'm going to tell you that I ran a marathon last year. On November 9th last year, I ran 42 kilometers, 42 kilometer, all right? In just under 5 hours and 40 minutes, all right? It was an amazing, it's very slow, just so you know. But the thing is, people are like, did you win? I'm like, no, I finished. That was the goal. The goal wasn't to win, it was to finish. And it was an amazing moment for me, all right? I posted my finishing photo on social media, and I've talked to so many people about it. It's just been one of the highlights. And what's interesting is that everyone likes to talk about the marathon, all right? Everyone wants to talk about my experience, how I finished, how I ran, what was it like to run for 5 hours and 40 minutes. I mean, just nonstop. I mean, that's just a long time of running. That's a lot of podcasts, all right, so that I was listening to, all right? But it's funny because everyone wants to talk about the marathon, but nobody wants to talk about the 5 months of training, all right? Nobody wants to talk about, hey, what was it like to wake up at 4 a.m. to run before you went to work? Nobody wants to talk about the injuries that I had to go to physical therapy to get over. Nobody wants to talk about the small steps it took to prepare for the marathon. Everyone wants to focus on the running of the marathon. So here's how it all started. When someone says, how did you run a marathon, or why did you run the marathon? Let me tell you how it all started, all right? It's all started, I try to take Saturday mornings off, all right? I usually like to drink my coffee, watch the news in my pajamas, all right? That's usually my Saturday morning. Well, every Saturday morning while I'm sitting around, Tasha is out running, usually 5 to 10 kilometers, all right? And so she's a workout warrior, and I'm sitting on the sofa, all right? And so she would come back from running like a 5K, and she'd be like hot and sweaty and tired, and I'd be sitting on the sofa eating snacks, all right? So I was beginning to feel guilty about this, right? Like she's out there getting in shape, she's super fit, and I'm getting super fat, all right? So it's like I need to do something about this. So I tried to talk her into stop running and sitting with me, all right? But that didn't work, all right? So finally I felt such guilt that I had to start doing something, all right? So I said, okay, I'll start getting in shape. I'll start running. And so before I ever ran 42 kilometers, I ran 1 kilometer. And then 2 kilometers, and then 3 kilometers, right? It started little by little, day after day, run after run, and then after several months of training, I ran the 42 kilometers in 5 hours, 39 minutes, and 19 seconds, right? Big things happen with small steps. Big things happen with small steps. We all want to do big things for God. I certainly do, right? We all want to do big things. We all want God to do big things in our lives. We all want to see God do big things through our lives. But big things usually happen with small steps. When I moved to Jokja 15 years ago, man, I wanted to do big things for God. But here's what I want us to learn today. God is the starter, not me. God started it all. We see this throughout Scripture. God is the starter. Salvation is not our idea. The church is not our invention. Your spiritual journey is not an accident. God started in creation. He started redemption. He started the church. He started the work in you. Here's the way I like to look at it. It's not my job to invent the future. It's my job to identify what God has already started. It's not my job to invent it or to create it, but I want to listen to the heart of God and figure out, God, what are you doing? What are you calling me to do? And then I step into it. God is the starter of all of this. And so in Joshua chapter 1, we see the people of God. They're finally going to walk into the promised land. They're finally going to finally step into the promises of God. After a generation of wandering through the desert, they're finally going to see God's best for their lives. Joshua is Moses' disciple. He was going to lead them across the Jordan River into the land that God promised them years and years ago. And here's what the Bible says in Joshua chapter 1. It says this. I'm going to the glasses. That's when you know it's Bible time. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people, get ready. Everybody say, get ready. All right, get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give you. To the Israelites, I will give you every place you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert of Lebanon to the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. I love that verse. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Be strong and very courageous. I like how he adds that, just in case you didn't hear me the first time, I'm going to say it again. All right. Be careful to obey all. Okay, this is key. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Well, this is like a key for success. Don't turn to the left or the right. Stay with God. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. That's 3, right? All right, just a heads up. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. When we look at the life of Joshua in scriptures, our minds automatically think to the courageous leadership, right? The conquering hero. We know this idea of be strong and courageous, that Joshua is going to lead the people of God into the promised land, into their best life. But today, I want us to see what made Joshua successful. How did it all start for him? Because before he ever stepped into the promised land, God was already doing something in his life. Before Joshua ever led the people, before he ever stepped into the call of God on his life, I want you to see this. that there were some hidden years, the hidden years of Joshua. We love to think of Joshua, the Joshua of Jericho, marching, shouting, walls falling down, right? But we forget about those hidden years. Joshua did not start as a conqueror. He started as a worshiper. Joshua did not start as a battle warrior. He started as a prayer warrior. Before he ever stood before cities, he knelt before the Lord. In Exodus 33, we read a passage of scripture that I read when I was a mahasiswa that really transformed my perspective on leadership and really guided me on how to pray and how to serve others. It says this, Exodus 33, we read about Moses. Now here's the purpose of this verse is written to talk about Moses, but I want you to look at what Joshua does. Because it says this, and it's Moses is going into the tent of meeting, all right? Now, why was it called the tent of meeting? Because that's where he met with God, all right? That's not a very creative name. It's like, what is TNP, Thursday night prayer, all right? Well, what do we do on Thursday nights? We pray, all right? So why is it called the tent of meeting? Because that's where he met with Jesus. That's where he met with God. All right. So not a very creative name. All right. But I like that. All right. Nice and clear. All right. So that's where he would meet with God. Now I want you to read what happened. I want you to see what happens in verse 11. It says this, inside the tent of meeting, the Lord would speak to Moses face to face as one speaks to a friend. Man, I want that kind of intimacy with God, to be called a friend of God, to speak with the Lord face to face. But I want us to look at the second part. Then Moses would return to camp, but his young aide, Joshua son of Nun, did not leave the tent. It says that Moses would speak to God face to face. There was an intimacy, a friendship there, and that's the kind of closeness that I want with God. But then what does it say about Joshua, his young disciple? After Moses would leave, Joshua stayed a little longer. Joshua stayed in the presence of God a little longer. Everyone else left. Moses left. The people went back to their daily life, but Joshua stayed a little longer. And that's what I want my life to be about, staying longer in the presence of God. And I want to encourage you to do this, especially for those of you while you're young, to learn, while you still have the energy, while you still have the time. Because when you become old and tired, all right, when you get more and more responsibilities, it gets more and more difficult to spend a little longer in the presence of God. So those of you in our mahasiswa, those of you in your 20s, man, learn how to stay a little longer in the presence of God. For many of you, these are the hidden years of your life, right? Before you're ever going to step into the promised land, God is saying, hey, I want to hide you away. I want you to learn how to stay a little longer in my presence. That's why I love seeing so many of you. On Sundays, when we dismiss, many of you will sit here and pray for a moment or two or 10 minutes. And it's that idea, I'm just gonna stay a little longer. I love seeing people come to the front. We have our leaders up here to pray with you. I love seeing people come to the front and pray. To say, you know what? I have other responsibilities. I need to go, but I want to stay just a little bit longer in the presence of God. This, for many of you, this is your Joshua season. These are the hidden years to learn how to stay a little bit longer in the presence of God. In June 2009, I finally arrived in Indonesia. So Tasha and I moved to Indonesia in 2009. It had been 14 years since the call of God on my life until the fulfillment, all right? So I know a thing or two about waiting for God's timing, all right? Some of you guys, God is speaking to you now, and it may take 14 years of growing and waiting and walking with Jesus before you step in. Some of you are like, I want it faster than that, Lord. I pray for you, it is faster, all right? In October 2007, Tasha and I agreed to move to Indonesia, all right? We made the commitment to move here, but for 18 months, we had to go through the approval process. We had to build our network of support. We had to fundraise. We had to study Indonesia and learn the culture. And finally, in June 2009, we arrived in Jakarta. I was so ready to go. I mean, this had been growing in me for 14 years. I had so much energy and so many ideas. And after we arrived in Jakarta and had our visas processed, we were sent to Salatiga. I had never been to Salatiga before. Actually, I didn't even know where it was. But I had an assignment that I received from my boss. My boss told me that I was to move to Salatiga and study Bahasa for 1 year and study the culture, learn the culture of Indonesia. And then he told me something that would break my heart. I was told, no ministry, no preaching, no leading for 1 year. Focus on language and culture. Only language and culture. What? I'd been waiting 14 years for this moment. I had been fundraising for 18 months for this moment. It was finally here. I was finally in Indonesia, and now I was being told no ministry for a year. Can I tell you? That was one of the loneliest seasons of my life. I moved to Indonesia with this calling to reach the next generation, but now I was stuck in this kota kecil where everything closes at 6 p.m., all right? But it was in those dark days of loneliness, sadness, and some depression that the Lord comforted me with this verse, Isaiah 49:2. Isaiah 49:2 says this, He has made me a select arrow, and He has hidden me in His quiver. What's the word for quiver in Bahasa? That's like the tas where the arrows go in. All right. So if you're wondering, like, what's a quiver? Like I'm quivering? No. All right. A quiver is where the arrows go in. So I read this Bible verse in the midst of my loneliness, one of the loneliest seasons of my life, and it affirmed something in me because the Lord said, "I have made you a select arrow." That an arrow is meant to be shot out, right? That an arrow is something for offense, right? An arrow is made for a mission. It's made for battle, right? And so I felt like the Lord saying, hey, I've created you for a mission. I've made you for a reason. There's purpose for what I'm putting you through in these years. You're gonna be shot out, but I need a season for you to be in the quiver. I'm not going to shoot you out yet. I need you to be close to my heart. I'm going to hide you away for a year before I send you out. Now, I've only had 2 visions from God in my whole life, all right? Now, some of you, maybe you get visions all the time from God, all right? For me, only 2, all right? And when do you think those visions came to me? That year in Salatiga. That year of loneliness, that year of being hidden away, that year of where I felt like God pulled me out of ministry and said, I'm gonna have you sit out for a little bit. And you're gonna learn how to be close to my heart. And those 2 visions really laid the foundation for everything we've done the last 15 years here in Jogja. Was it a difficult season in Salatiga? Yes. It's not easy to be hidden away. But here's what happened. It's in those hidden years that none of you saw that prepared me to step into success. It was in those years that there was no jama'at, there was no celebration, there was no ministry, but it was those years of being hidden away that prepared me to step into success. How does anything begin? It starts by being hidden away. For many of you, these are the hidden years of your life. Because it's in those hidden years that, number 2, this is what happens. The second thing is that you get the eyes of faith. It's in those hidden years when God tucks you away, when He says, when you're like, I'm ready to go, Lord, you're ready to be shot out like an arrow, that He says, no, not yet. I'm going to hide you away. I'm putting you in the quiver. It's in those years when you're close to his heart that you begin to see with the eyes of faith. Now, studying Bahasa Indonesia is always tricky, all right? Like today or this week I was talking to some people and we were talking about the word nongkrong, all right? And we learned, Pastor Vanessa and I were talking to Hendro and some others because Zia was there. I can't remember who else was there, but we were talking about the word nongkrong. I guess it's a noun, right? And so Pastor Vanessa had this great question. She said, well, if nongkrong is a noun, can we menongkrong? Like, can we hang out as a verb? And I remember Kazia was like, oh, you can't say it like that. It's not a word. All right. So I guess di nongkrong, or what was the word we came up with? Tongkrongan, right? That's like the place. I don't know. So either way, Bahasa can be very tricky. I can remember preaching at KKR. All right. I'm preaching in Bahasa, and I remember I was preaching with all my heart, and it was the altar time. So everybody's standing, the worship team's playing, and I want to say, the Lord wants to give you his eyes to see, right? And so I was saying, man, I was praying, God, give me your eyes so I can see like you see. Well, we all know the word for eye in Bahasa is what? Mata. So the word for eyes is what? Mata-mata, right? No, it's not, right? Mata-mata is spies, right? Like spies, like, all right, he's going to spy on you, right? So I'm praying, I'm passionate, I'm saying, God, I think I prayed it like this. I said, Tuhan, tolong kasih mata-mata engkau kepada kami, like, give us your spies. We want to be, so I was like, we want to be spies for Jesus. We're coming into the culture, like that, all right? So it can be a little tricky, this language, right? Well, fast forward in our scripture, to the edge of the promised land, right? Joshua and the people of God are standing right before the promise of God. Earlier, Moses had sent out what? He'd sent out 12 spies, right? 12 mata-mata, right? To check out the promised land. He sent out 12 mata-mata, bukan 12 mata. All right, so 12 spies, not 12 eyes. All right, well, here's what those 12 spies reported. 10 of them came back with a negative report, right? They say, the land is full of giants. We're only grasshoppers compared to them. They even express, to my surprise, when you read the scriptures, they express regret for even leaving the slavery of Egypt. They said, we had it better back in Egypt when we were slaves, and they've forgotten about the promised freedom in the promised land. So of the 12 spies that are sent out from Moses, 10 come back with a report full of fear. But 2 of them, when they checked out the promised land, they came back with a report full of faith. Caleb, and who was the other one? Joshua. Caleb and Joshua saw the same challenges, the same things, but instead of fear, they focused on the promises of God. Instead of being paralyzed with fear, they were filled with faith. They were ready to go and take the land. It reminds me of a story I heard about these 2 salesmen, the 2 Americans. They were selling shoes, all right? These 2 American salesmen, these shoe salesmen, back in the early 1900s, all right? Their companies sent these 2 shoe salesmen to Africa, like 150 years ago to Africa. And the first salesman writes back to America, and he says, when he was asked about how was your experience selling shoes, the first guy writes back and says, I'm coming home. No one here wears shoes. The second salesman, he writes back and says, send more. No one wears shoes. All right. So the idea is perspective, right? Same situation, different perspective. We see this in Numbers 14. It said this about the 2 spies. Two of the men who'd explored the land, Joshua, son of Nun, Caleb, son of Jephunneh, tore their clothing. They said to all the people of Israel, the land we traveled through and explored is a wonderful land. And if God is pleased with us, he will bring us safely into the land and give it to us. It is rich. It's a rich land flowing with milk and honey. That's interesting. All right. Do not rebel against the Lord. Do not be afraid of the people of the land. They are only helpless prey to us. They have no protection, but the Lord is with us. Don't be afraid of them. 12 spies, saw the same land. 10 of them saw giants. 2 of them saw the promises of God. Why was Joshua different? Why did Joshua have a different report, a different perspective? Maybe because he stayed in the presence of God a little longer. Maybe because he'd spent some time developing those eyes of faith, spending time when others were going about their daily business. He had stayed a little longer. He was able to see with God's eyes, through the eyes of faith. Others said, we're like grasshoppers. Joshua said, the Lord is with us. Same situation, different perspective. When we first moved to Jokcha in 2010, August 2010, we had no idea what we were going to do. All we knew, when Tasha and I moved here in 2010, we only had 2 ideas. We wanted to reach the next generation and invite others to join us to do it. That was our vision. That was our thing. So all of this you see around you, the building, the ministry, the programs, the resources, all of this, we do all of this just for 2 reasons: to reach the next generation and to find others to help us do that, right? That's why I have no problem changing programs or being creative or looking for new ways to do it, because for me, it's never been about programs or this building. It's always been about reaching the next generation for Jesus and inviting others to help us. So when we first moved here, it was awesome. It was totally chaotic. I was meeting people all over Jokcha. We had no building. So I was meeting people on campus. I was meeting them in churches, at cafes. I was even doing an English conversation group at a couple of the different mosques here in Jokcha. But I began to see, as we grew, we needed a building. I felt like the Lord said to me, Jamie, you need a physical presence in Jokcha, because some people would say, hey, I'd be meeting with people and tutoring in English, and they would say, well, where's your office? And I'd be like, well, it's on the 2nd floor of my house, so I felt like, man, if we're really going to have bigger impact, we needed a building, we needed something. But I knew it wasn't a church, because I knew unchurched people weren't going to come to a church. So we needed something creative. We needed something different. So I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. I talked to leaders and mentors in my life, and I asked them, what should we do? And some said you should open a cafe. All right. Some said that you should open a youth center. We talked about buying a futsal court. I even had this crazy idea. I still think this would be a cool idea. We thought about buying some just some land, and building like a playground, like a park there, so families could come and play with their children, and then we could have like spiritual conversations while their kids play. I think it'd be an incredible outreach. All right. So we had so many ideas, but I felt like I still had no idea. Right. I felt like I had so many good ideas, but no God idea. Right. And then I was really complaining to the Lord. I know when you pray, you never complain. You're just like, oh, God, you're so good. All right, for me, I was just complaining because I was like, God, I want to do something for you, but I don't know what to do. And then God spoke this to my heart. I felt like God said, hey, I'll show you when you get there. I'll show you later. And I was like, God, I'm trying to raise money to buy a building. What am I going to do with this building? All right. And God said, I'll tell you later. And I told God, I said, God, do you know that's a terrible business plan? All right. Like, who's going to invest in a business when they say, well, what's the business? And I'm going to say to them, I'll tell you later. All right. Yeah, nobody's going to be like, okay, I'll invest now. No way. But that's all I had. All I had from God was the eyes of faith to say, God, I'm going to trust you that if you're calling me to do this, you're going to provide for it. So over the next year, I would meet with pastors and business people and other leaders, and I would share this vision of how we're going to reach the next generation in Jokcha, and they would say, how? And I'd say, I don't know, but I'll tell you later, all right? And after 1 year of doing this, I remember going and looking at the building at Yop Square, our first building, our first English center. And after 1 year, God said, open up an IEC, an English Learning Center, right? And that's when it all started. So in 2023, after all the funds were raised, that's when God spoke to me. And that's how we started our business. While other pastors were planting churches, we were starting a business. And here's why. I knew if we wanted to reach people no one else was reaching, we had to do something no one else was doing. To reach people no one else is reaching, you must do something. You must do things that no one else is doing. And so that's why instead of planting a church, we started a business here in Jogja. Because I was thinking about this. I'm talking about how all of this started. We started with in Salatiga, then we started with our first English center. Now we're in this building, our second building. But I was thinking, if you really want to know how all of this started, you'd have to go all the way back to 1995. What? 1995? You weren't even born yet. 1995. 31 years ago, I was in my second semester at university. When I heard a pastor, I was in a setting like this, when I heard a pastor read Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8, it said this, "Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, 'Whom shall I send? Who will go for us?' And I said, 'Here am I, send me.'" So the pastor invited the group of mahasiswa, the young group of students. He said, "Man, if you'll have that same response as Isaiah, 'Here I am, Lord, send me,' I want you to stand to your feet." And so I did. And in that moment, I was changed. My whole life was committed to Jesus and his mission. Philippians 1:6, "He who began the good work." That's when the good work began in me. It didn't start when we rented our first English center. It didn't start when we started English worship. It didn't start when I moved to Indonesia. All of this started with a simple prayer in 1995 when I was 18 years old. "Here I am, Lord, send me." That's when the good work began in me. All the good work you see around me, that you see around us, it all began with a simple prayer. "Here I am, Lord, send me." I hope you enjoyed today's sermon. Feel free to contact us with any questions through our Instagram, @EWJogja. Feel free to share this podcast with others. Until next time, may God bless you and keep you.